Oh, I like this. You can see me. I'm not blessed with a lot of height. Yeah, I'm really sorry Andrew couldn't be here today. He is the cooler half of our duo, but I shall do my best, and I'm actually going to do something that will impress him greatly, and that is turn the timer on. For those who don't know me, I have ADHD and do tend to prattle on quite a bit. So we won't worry about... Where's the clicker? How do I do the thing? Hello, Sean, help. I don't know what to press. I forgot to ask that question.
Is it this right here? Yeah, that one.
Forward and back. Okay, so all right, we'll go forward. All right, so today we are going to have a little bit of a chat. It's not quite as cool as the projects that you've seen in terms of subject matter and things like that, but it is actually really incredibly important because we want to see you all here next year. And we actually can't deny the fact that we live in an age where we are seeing emergencies more often and climate change is happening. And, you know, we want to try and do our best to keep everybody as safe as possible. I do just want to briefly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are working on today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any members of the community here today. I was not fortunate enough to be here for the acknowledgement this morning. I was stuck in a meeting with some government officers, which are unlucky. So yeah, just a little bit about Andrew and myself. So Andrew and I are both people with disability who kind of fell into this conversation by accident. I was really fortunate in 2022 to be exposed to some work through the United Nations on disability inclusive disaster preparedness, and came home and essentially chewed Andrew's ear off, and we self-funded ourselves to get to Brisbane to learn more, and that's where we were introduced to P-CEP. And we have over time seen how something that we don't get discussed in a lot of the high-level meetings, people with disability or people that we like to call at greater risk, we rail against the word vulnerable, how we're not necessarily included in mainstream preparedness planning, and so we thought we wanted to get involved and see what we could do to help our community. In my paid job, I'm a policy officer for Women with Disabilities Australia, and Andrew is the Executive Director at Physical Disabilities Australia. I'm also a DFAS volunteer as a result of my exposure to this. My curiosity got the better of me, so I'm kind of coming at this today from two lenses, but essentially we're just really, really passionate about making sure that our communities are kept as safe as possible. So some of the things we're going to talk about today, just a couple of brief facts about preparedness, some of the examples of the risks that we might face, because a lot of us think about the big ones, but there's lots of other things that we don't talk about that will impact people and their carers and support networks. I just want to take you quickly through the new emergency warning system that is now nationwide and active, where to get accurate information and getting some prepared and some tools that you can use. It's a tool that I love and I could talk about for the rest of the afternoon, but I've only got a very short space of time. So what I've done is we've got some hard copies for folks who don't have access to digital or printing. There's a limited ones there. And we've also brought a sign-in sheet so that if you would like us to send you out post this conversation, a list of some of the resources that we think are really useful to have a look at, just let us know, and we're happy to email that out to you at a later date. So some of the things that keep me up at night. Around 71% of people with a disability actually don't have any preparedness plan for themselves, for disasters or even just emergencies. And this has actually gotten worse. There was a report done in 2013 and a report done last year, and over that time we've become less prepared, if you can believe that. 13% of us don't have support to evacuate if we need to. About 85% of folks with disability have actually never participated in any form of disaster management or any risk reduction activities or conversations where they live. And only 20% of us oops, there's a typo, would be capable of evacuating if there actually was a disaster to impact them. Unfortunately, we're 2 to 4 times more likely to die or be injured. We actually do face a higher risk of property loss and long-term displacement from community. We actually are up against the right to be rescued as a human right versus the realities of triage when something happens. Like when, the emergency services, we have limited resources, so there's that real significant tension there. The really good news is we're actually really ready and able and capable of being part of the solution, as are you, which is why I'm very thankful that some people are in the room today. So what are we actually preparing for? A lot of people think about fire, floods, those sorts of things. What we've found through the work that we've done with our communities is we know that it's more than that, and the Department of the WA government has about 28 different situations that they look at. A lot of people think about fires and house fires and floods and those sorts of things, but there's so much more. It's things like chemical events. It could be something as an industrial fire in your suburb. It could be the impact of a storm. Hopefully not tsunamis here, but believe it or not, we do plan for it. It's also things like power outages. I live in the Perth Hills, and I know that if I have a certain amount of days over a certain temperature, that I'm going to lose power, and I'm going to lose it for a significant amount of time, because a lot of the infrastructure in various parts of everywhere, essentially, we don't have good infrastructure, and it's struggling with the impact of increasing heat. Heat waves is something that we often don't have conversations about either, but we know, particularly as the planet gets hotter, those heat waves are going to become more intense, they're going to last longer, they're going to be more frequent. And unfortunately, that takes a toll on everybody's health and well-being, but also the equipment that we use for mobility, for technology, all those sorts of things. And one of the things that we have found that people don't often think about either is that it doesn't have to be happening in your local area to impact you. We've experienced where we've seen, railways being blocked off, meaning supplies can't get through, medication shortages that are actually nothing to do with what's happening here in WA, but they do impact if you can't get access to them. So it's really important that, and this is, I'm not here to shock and scare, but it is the reality that we are all facing. And when you are a carer or you are a person who needs additional support in these things, the best thing you can do is to be prepared and, and be ready. Part of that comes from knowing what is this new warning system. So this year, it started out last year, but now it's actually adopted here in WA as well. We have a new standard Australian warning system. So we used to have different states and territories doing their own. We now have the standard one for all of those, and it has 3 main sections, or 3 sort of levels, I guess. And why this is important for you to know. Advice, just, there's something happening, keep an eye out, those sorts of things. Watch and act. It's starting to get a little bit more serious. You really need to think about your own action plans, and is it time for you to move out of the area, etc., etc. And then there's an emergency warning, or what we used to know as evacuate now sort of thing. Why I want you to be aware of this, and why I want you to start doing things like checking Emergency WA on a regular basis, etc., is because for many of us, it will be too late to move once it gets to the emergency. For those of us who require additional support to get out of an area, it might mean we have to wait for someone to get into the area, etc., etc. It is often very difficult, and you may not be able to leave an area. What a lot of people don't realise is that in certain areas when that level is initiated, people actually can't get in to come and get you. Okay, so this is why I'm having this conversation with you today. Again, not to scare you, but to get you prepared to thinking about where am I going to go and when am I going to do it. Because we know from the evidence that if we have people who have thought about this, who have good robust plans, and they are moving much before it gets to that red level, then they're safer. And over time, the impact of that disaster or emergency on them is actually greatly reduced. And it isn't just the things like loss of the valuables and things like that, it's mental health and well-being, it's physical well-being. So this is about really trying to minimise the impact of those as much as possible. One of the things that we often come across, and even in my role as a DFES volunteer, I do have a bit of a giggle sometimes, which is very inappropriate, I'm sorry. But where do we go to get the right information? These are the key points that I want people to get familiar with. The first one is Emergency WA. And I really want people to get in the habit of knowing where that is, knowing how that platform works, practice it. It's actually pretty user-friendly as far as state government-funded platforms go. But it has a lot of really useful information, and it has the most accurate information. The other thing that we have emergency alert. Now, the emergency alert is, you will have all at some point received a message on your mobile phone to say there's someone missing in your area or there's something happening in your area. Very, very valuable, very useful service. It will activate when you were last in that area, sort of thing, and pick up where your cell phone is. But unfortunately, is only as good as the infrastructure standing up to whatever's happening in the area. So that's why it's really important for you to know about the other ones as well, such as radios like ABC Emergency and the Emergency WA app, because cell towers are flammable too. So it's really important that you're aware of that. One of the most important reasons that we want to have these conversations is that it is difficult when you are someone with mobility issues or you have specialised equipment that you quite honestly can't live without, or you need extra support. Evacuation is really difficult, okay? And unfortunately, evacuation centres, they're not nice places to be. They're noisy, they're crowded, they may not have all of the equipment that you require, they may not be accessible. They are set up as a temporary emergency thing. They're very, very stressful places. You can't take your animals there unless they are accredited or, they are assistance animals and things like that. And sometimes emergency service resources are in short supply, and they're just generally not a fun place to be. Okay, and they can add to, if you are supporting someone who perhaps has dementia, or if you're someone like me who has a lot of sensory issues, they can actually add to the problem. So what we encourage people to do is, this is your last resort, okay, and the importance of planning helps you to not have to get to that point, all right? How are we going to get prepared? This tool here is the reason why I guess I'm kind of standing here today. Now, hand on heart, I had no hand in developing it. I since then found myself working with the team that developed it. But this tool was developed by people with disability for people with disability, but we do know that often when that happens, it becomes something that is universally accessible for lots of different groups of people. It was developed because when looking at standard mainstream preparedness tools, it became quickly apparent that it doesn't necessarily address all of those complexities that Jethro and Renee have been talking about, all those systems, all that extra that comes when you are a person who requires extra support or you're supporting someone. So P-CEP was developed to kind of try and address that gap. The thing that I most love about P-CEP is it starts from a strength-based conversation. What is the stuff that you can already do to help keep yourself safe? Because when you want to sit down and have a conversation with someone about, emergencies and disasters, it's bloody stressful, right? It's scary and it can be really overwhelming to think about all of this stuff happening, let alone act on it when it's actually happening. So P-CEP starts from a strengths-based conversation. It looks at the things that you can already do, the connections that you already have that you can harness, and the ideas or the possibilities or the knowledge that you have. And we find that that's actually a much more productive way to start a conversation with someone rather than coming in with the sky is falling type of thing. It's much more empowering for you guys who support people, or as a person who receives support, to think about, I can already do a whole bunch of stuff to keep me safe, I just need to order it into some sort of plan. And then we move on to addressing the gaps and working out where the connections need to be made and who we need to talk to. It has a really great, this is a really great sort of overarching diagram. The way P-CEP works, it kind of looks at the domains of life. It looks at things like my level of social connectedness. Who do I know in my community? Who could I reach out? It looks at transportation. So what do I need to get around? What do I currently use? Who are those people? How is that going to be impacted in an emergency situation? What do I already have at my disposal? Things like assistive technology. And this is a really interesting question that we have. Oh my God, shush up. Gave me a heart attack. That was ironically me just getting called out for a fire. We have a look at assistive technology, and I think it's pretty fair to say that if you're a person who has a different support needs or mobility aids and things, you come with a lot of stuff, right? And the reality is if you need to move out, if there's things like that, you may not be able to if you're talking about things like wheelchairs and hoists and electric beds, etc., etc., etc. So part of the conversation around assistive technology is, what is that critical thing that I actually cannot do without? Right? And we had this conversation, the P-CEP team, with a gentleman who essentially relied on someone for every aspect of his life and care and support. And had a power wheelchair, had the shower chairs, everything. And for him, the only thing that it was critically important that he left that house with was his alternating air mattress, because that's the thing that would keep him out of hospital. That's the thing that would keep him well, that would maintain his health, all of that sort of stuff. If he had to be in a hospital or a different situation for a long period of time, that was the thing, that was the critical thing. So having the conversation around assistive tech helps you to identify that and have it ready and be prepared. We also look at things like management of health, having conversations around who are the people in that person's life, making sure that all of the information is recorded down, but also what's the backup plan. If you have to be evacuated from your local area, chances are your chemist is too. So you might not be able to get access to the medications and things like that. I have already said I have ADHD, so my medication has to be with the one particular chemist. If I can't get there, I can't get my medication, right? So what's my backup plan? Have I talked to the prescribing doctor, and have we got alternatives, those sorts of things. And that's the case for many medications. So what is that we need? Where is that health information recorded? Do I have all the detail that I need? We also look at things like personal support and communication, and assistance animals is really important. Have we actually prepared to evacuate the assistance animal as well as ourselves? Have we got the dog food? Have we got the lead? Have we got all of the paperwork that we need? If we need to go to an evacuation centre, we need to show that this is our assistance animal type of thing. So that's really important as well. And even right down to our living situations. So who do I live with? Is it am I aware of evacuation routes? Am I aware of who else is in the building if I live in an apartment block? All of those sorts of things. What do I do if the lift doesn't work? So it's a really robust conversation that you have. And I keep using the word conversation because that's what it is. This is not a ticker box form. and it's not something that you can really do in an hour. What we encourage people to, because it's really actually overwhelming to do it all at once, and people, if I tried to do it with my loved ones, they'd throw it at me and walk away. You do it over a period of time, and then each time you come back to a new domain, you start with that strengths-based conversation. And people find that it's actually a lot easier to manage that conversation when you start from that period of empowerment and positivity. It's less overwhelming, and you don't feel so helpless, which is what a lot of people have told us, that every time they've sat down to think about that stuff, it's all just too much. All of those other systems, plus now this on top, what are we going to do? So we start with conversations that are about strengths and empowerment, and people feel much more engaged and interested to do that. Now, step 4 is probably the most crucial part of it, and that is communicating the plan outwards. It's of no use to anyone if it sits in your back pocket. So who do we tell? Do we tell all of us that we make sure our service providers have copies of this? We make sure, our other loved ones, other family members have copies of this. We make sure that anybody who's going to be relevant to the enaction of that plan has access to that plan in some way. I just really wanted to take everybody through P-CEP. It is something that we have tested with people experiencing homelessness, that we've tested with folks who are older. We've obviously tested it with the disability community, and we've even made some DFES staff do it and things like that. And I can see Jenny nodding her head because she knows, because she used to work there. They thought they were really prepared. And they looked at this and went, oh my God, they're not. And they're the ones in the know. So I guess I'll finish up now, so in case there are any questions. But we're very happy to continue this conversation with you. But I really would love everybody to really start thinking now about their plan and about what they can do, and about how they're going to support themselves and their loved ones, so that we can see you all again next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Yep.
We have a question here. Mm-hmm. Are you also involved in the recovery planning phase, and how? Me
personally, yes. I'm a serial volunteer. So I volunteer for DFES, and I also volunteer for an organisation called Disaster Relief Australia, so I've had a little bit of exposure to that. And then I have, one of my hats is the Ministerial Advisory Council on Disability, and I've been really fortunate to be part of the recovery group from the, and I can't say the name, but the fires in Wanneroo. So I got to be involved in that, and actually Andrew and I would really love to be a broader part of that, because what we find, and I don't think it'll surprise anybody here in the room, that when we start to talk about rebuilding, we're also then again not part of the conversations often, and so what we want to do is be more involved in those spaces so that we can encourage local governments and organisations to kind of build back better, because the more universal we can make those recovery processes and infrastructure and things like that, then the better it is for everyone. So yeah.
Great, and I think we've got time for one more quick one. Can it be done online, or is it a physical?
Yeah, so it can be. I haven't got it. I don't know where my slide went, but the workbooks and everything are online under a Collaborating for Inclusion website, which I've got some sheets over here at the table if you're interested. It can all be done online. There's some great explainers online. It's all free. It's open source. And so, yeah, it absolutely can. The only thing, I guess, there's also a free facilitators course if you're interested in becoming a facilitator of P-CEP. And it sort of goes through how to have those good conversations and things like that. So I encourage anyone, if they're interested, to do that. Yes, it is. The only thing I guess I want to say is remember, just bring it back to those conversations, because those are the things where you're going to get the gold. You know, we've all sort of talked about conversations and the richness that they bring in a previous speakers, and that's where you'll get the gold and get the really good plans happening. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.